So I'm on Twitter the other day and I come across this talk by Justin Rosenstein, the guy who co-founded Asana. Remember, the other co-founder of this company is Dustin Moskovitz, the guy who co-founded Facebook. So Justin gave this attemptedly inspirational talk at TechCrunch Disrupt 2014, where he's calling upon the techies of the world, primarily Silicon Valley, to use their skills to help humanity thrive and make money while doing so. You may not have missed anything if you haven't seen the talk. Now, a lot of people have bashed this talk, and I thought I'd provide my own little bit of insight. So Justin, as a fan of yours and one of Asana's early adopters, here is my unsolicited response. First off, thank you for giving this talk. Your talk captures just about majority of the things that are wrong about a technologist's view of saving the world. It's a beautiful reference point for constructive criticism. And just to be clear, there are a lot of people whose beliefs resonate with what you have to say, so you shouldn't feel alone here. First off, you say,
and what's so amazing about being in technology is that we don't even have to sacrifice our personal well-being in order to do this. I mean, it would be insensitive for me to give this talk in most industries. If you're struggling to, make ends meet, if you're working on, just making sure you're avoiding unemployment, there's no way you can think about making sure your work is helping humanity thrive. But for us, who have been lucky enough to have the opportunities we have to be born at the right place, at the right time, with the right education, we can have our cake and eat it too. And so I would say settle for nothing less than being in the intersection of doing work that both helps humanity thrive and at the same time helps you thrive. So society often gives us this dichotomy. It says you can either do one or the other. You can either work really hard in order to make the world a better place, work for a nonprofit, but you're going to end up making a lot of sacrifices in the process. Or you can make a bunch of money, but you're going to miss out on the opportunity to really contribute your gifts to the world. And I just want to reject this as a totally false dichotomy. Especially in technology, you can be the change and make the money at the same time.
I'm sorry to break this to you this way, but you're actually wrong. And this dichotomy exists, and it exists for good reason. For most part, it is untrue that you can live the same standard of living that you're used to in the tech sector, which you call thriving, while making a deeply meaningful impact on a real problem at the same time.
But mostly I'm here because the more of us who choose to work in that intersection, the more beautiful the world will become. And I want to live in the beautiful world that we can create together.
Perhaps you're not entirely wrong there, but it still hinges on this massive assumption that there exists this intersection for the majority of us.
We're at this unprecedented moment in civilization where suddenly this tiny number of people have the ability to have huge world-shaping impact on everyone in the world. It was just 10 years ago that these guys were sitting in their dorm room, and today Facebook connects over 1 billion people. Now, no company is perfect, but the impact that Facebook has had is undeniable. As just one small example, Jared Cohen of the State Department said that Facebook's mere existence in 5 years did more to improve relationships between Arabs and Israelis than 30 years of coordinated attempts by governments. This is a photo. This is a photo of a Facebook page called Israel Loves Iran. It was put up by one father. And it inspired this movement spontaneously, where hundreds of thousands of Israelis posted similar photos saying, Israel loves Iran, and hundreds of thousands of Iranians responded saying, Iran loves Israel. Maybe you can apply technology to an area you're passionate about, maybe one of these areas that have really juicy, important problems for the world. And then, in thinking about the second circle, what kind of work makes you come alive? What are you passionate about? And also, what will provide you with the compensation that you need in order to have the lifestyle you desire?
Now I get it. I'm so stupid. Here's where you're confused. You're unconsciously categorizing all of these different kinds of human problems in the same bucket. So when you say impact, you're actually giving the same amount of value to a Google search algorithm improvement or existence of a Facebook page where Iranians express love for Israelis or vice versa, as you are to access to food to poor people in a remote place. Now, It's actually completely debatable how much impact one has over the other. With impact as you define it, there is no global definition. That said, you just cannot simplify the model to a point where you're saying it takes the same kinds of inputs to tackle one kind of human problem, such as information retrieval, to a different kind of problem which is fundamentally complex and of a different nature, like access to food and food security. So while there might be an intersection, it exists for a very small subset of problems.
In fact, how many people here have seen the HBO series Silicon Valley? Yeah, so it opens with a scene of this douchey entrepreneur who's just sold his company. And he gets up on stage and he's like, guys, we're making a lot of money. But the important thing is that we're making the world a better place through hierarchically distributed software. And this is funny because it's true. It's true that there are a ton of people in our industry who are clearly just out to make a bunch of money for themselves and are using the lip service of making the world a better place in order to look better. But it's also true that hierarchically distributed systems are making the world a better place.
Do you even forget it?
The reason I went to work for Google is because Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. That is a hell of a mission. You know, I look at Lyft, Zipcar, and Uber that have the potential to use ride-sharing to decimate the number of cars that need to be manufactured each year. I look at Solar City, which Elon Musk is on the board of, which is rapidly accelerating our transition to using solar paneling in residences. I look at Quora, that's using software to take information out of people's heads and make it accessible to everyone in the world. I think about Amazon Web Services. These guys are building this core layer of infrastructure that then allows, I think, most of the companies I just mentioned to build on top and do great things.
Justin, it seems to me that you do not seem to understand the problems that the majority of the people in this world face today. I want to say two things here. First, you're looking at a minute subset of problems and solutions which you're exposed to, which, as I've written about in the past, is a function of where you grew up, where you live, and the people you interact with. Now, in your case, that has been California's Bay Area all your life. Don't want to make this a personal attack. But to pick off on a strand that I started off on before, you can kind of think about this as a hierarchy or a pyramid of needs, similar to what Maslow came up with. So while faster information access and real-time sharing economy transportation are very real solutions, they address very higher order needs for a small section of society, which is primarily the upper echelon. Now, very few times do these very solutions happen to address a fundamental human need that's found lower down that pyramid. The need to seek basic information or communicate with people happen to share this characteristic, thus allowing companies like Facebook and Google or even Solar City to make billions of dollars while, as you say, help people thrive. That said, you simply cannot overemphasize their importance even if they fulfill the needs for someone who primarily identifies themselves with problems lower down that pyramid. For example, while getting likes on our comments and pictures is one of the greatest joys in the world that you've given to over 1 billion people, and thank you for that, it simply does not put food on the table of a poor child's family, or give him economic or social mobility, even give him education or give him values, or for a matter of fact, help him communicate with a relative who is not illiterate and isn't online. But that brings me to my second point. You cannot attribute the impactful nature of the handful of these companies that have managed to improve a large number of lives to highly noble or idealistic missions. They just happen to stumble upon little opportunities to do a little good in a relentless chase for revenues and growth. And you know what? Despite solving all the problems we mentioned, there's still a large number of problems, the majority of them, that these companies have not been able to touch for decades now. Only when you're of the size of a Facebook or a Microsoft or a Google can you happen to devote any active energy to addressing these human problems beyond your product offerings, and that to a very minuscule amount.
We in this room, we in technology, have a greater capacity to change the world than the kings and presidents of even 100 years ago.
So I'm not saying that technology isn't useful in solving core human problems that aren't felt in Silicon Valley. I'm a technologist myself, so I see where you're coming from. And technology cannot be discounted in its power to be a multiplicative force and to really be a catalyst in transforming and improving human life. But that's all it is. Technology is a great set of tools to support the ones who are trying to make change. But it's nothing more than a set of tools. Technology is a catalyst and nothing more. You're completely exaggerating the ability of technology by pushing techies to drive change through the tools they work on. But those aren't going to solve the problems. If there's one thing you take away from this response, it should be this. Majority of the problems, the challenges that we need to solve to improve human life around the world are extremely human, extremely social, often economic, behavioral, very deeply culturally rooted, and often psychological problems. You can't solve them like technology problems because they don't exhibit the same characteristics as technology problems. They're complex in their own ways, not algorithm complex, human complex. I'm scared about making an analogy to technology here, mostly because I think that technology problems and human development problems aren't all that analogous to each other. But for a moment, think about the computing stack. It's like you're asking armies of people writing front-end CSS code to write or figure out better system-level code for better ops. Now the guy who writes float left every day probably has no idea how memory even works. So it's like if CSS could solve all the problems of the stack, then your ask would be valid. Does that make any sense? I really hope so.
But as an industry, it seems like we're leaving a ton of opportunity on the table right now.
No, we're not. We're not. Markets are amazingly efficient at identifying and enticing entrepreneurs into lucrative financial opportunities around. Now, there's probably a very small amount of unobserved opportunity, but even a brilliant person like you isn't working on these problems, because these problems are really complex and hard to solve and require massive amounts of resources behind them. Example, Gates Foundation. And there are some extremely smart people trying to solve these problems. You really just need to look harder. Tons of social entrepreneurs working their asses off day in and out. They just don't make your list of success stories because they don't make the 5 billions.
So I work on Asana. Asana's mission is to help humanity thrive by enabling all teams to work together effortlessly. So this came out of my partner Dustin's and my experience at Facebook, where we built the internal communication teamwork software that powers Facebook internally. And what we realized was if we could build that as this layer that underlie all the other companies that are doing great things in the world, that could be amazing. Because we can't cure cancer and send people to Mars and make government more efficient ourselves. But if we could build a platform that would enable all those people to work more effortlessly together, we could accelerate all their initiatives, and that would be a hugely leveraged opportunity to help humanity thrive. Recently, my heart was warmed to receive this picture all the way from Nepal of a young woman named Lakshmi, who I was told by there's this NGO, Possible Health, that brings healthcare to her area. And they said that the impact of switching from email to Asana was so great that there are countless people they've been able to provide healthcare to. So that Lakshmi is just one example of someone who is well, who would otherwise be sick if not for that extra organizational power. And that's just one of tens of thousands of teams that we serve.
Look, Asana is brilliant. Respect. I use it daily. But I think you're being delusional about the impact you're having and successfully shielding yourself by claiming that you're enabling others. This narrative is helping you chicken out on working on the real problems. Now, Possible Health, who I'm also a fan of, they are the real heroes. Ask yourself this question. Would they be much worse off if they used Trello or Jira or another tool? I think they're being nice to you, but you're using this story to feed the theory of change that you've built for yourself and are greatly exaggerating the impact you're having. Look, I say all this, but I don't blame you. It's a common bias amongst us technologists, one of creating platforms for do-gooders. But we're not solving the real problems, we're chickening out. Tech is the easy part. Human problems, these don't scale like clusters on AWS or have virality like 9gag's videos. There is often no unique competitive advantage here.
You guys are all very, very, very much too nice. They're very much too nice, I think. So when I heard that we were going to have another rich tech dude from Stanford tell us how to live our lives, I was really excited because I realized here at Disrupt, we've never had that happen before.
Right.
Now, before you even got up here, Jordan made a really good point that this isn't even a new topic, let alone a new theme. We've seen it in 2010, you blogged in 2012, we had it at Disrupt last year. So why are you regurgitating stuff you've already said before again? And what impact will it have this time that you failed to have the times before? Okay, why do you hate Candy Crush? You took a shot at mobile social games. Everyone knows it's a veiled shot at Candy Crush. So why specifically that genre? Why is it worthy of your opprobrium? Okay, how do you define thriving? This is the core kind of construct of your entire talk. How do we increase human thriving? You didn't really define it. Now, I think we can all agree that clean water and that sort of thing is good. But you want to apply this concept all the way up to mobile social games like Candy Crush. So what's your definition of thriving? But isn't it kind of arrogant for you to decide what counts as thriving? Because you're describing a certain future that you want, and you're saying, everyone please come follow me. Who put you in charge to decide what thriving is and why we should follow in your path?
Yes.
It sounds like you're describing Brownian motion. Chaos. I mean, if we don't have a goal we're working towards in our investments and how we build companies, what does it matter if we call it thriving or call it anything else?
Yeah,
but what about companies that I think are on the dark side that actually think they're helping humanity thrive, like Palantir? They probably don't think they're the evil bad guys, but in reality, I think we have a different view. So if we all set our own goals and go forth when we're opposed to one another and we're kind of running in diametric opposite directions, are we making any progress at all? All right, let's take that and apply it to venture capital. How would your overall rubric apply to venture capital and how they allocate funds to new companies? If you didn't have a lot of money, do you think that anyone would actually listen to you?
And so
you say that now. I'm not quite sure I buy that. It's like, look back in time, I was just this young lad right out of college with my starry eyes, and I happened to pick Google over these other great job offers that paid 6 figures. Like, I don't know. It's not really that altruistic. I'm not like, wow, good job, man. You saved the world.
Yeah.
Why not focus on more immediate change? We both live in SF. SF has a lot of problems. Homelessness, for example, we can see this pervasively on a day-to-day basis. Instead of doing talks like this, why don't you break off a chunk of your personal wealth and enact change tomorrow in the very place where we live?
So in the end, the super blunt and straightforward TechCrunch journalist calls BS on most of the things you talked about. Admittedly, he is pretty harsh on you. I don't have a point to make here. I just want to make sure that people watching this video see this bit because his questions are pretty right on, and your answers aren't. So why would I bother to take away my weekend to respond to you? I feel like this would give you and a lot more people some food for thought about your views. And if that wasn't useful, here's some real things you could do. Go to one of the world's poorer countries. Pick any. If that's too far, go to rural America. If that's too far, go to Tenderloin in San Francisco. Now, remove your software hat and closely observe what people's problems in life are. And then think about how much Google and Twitter and Quora and Lyft and Asana are doing to solve these problems. Think about where these products are in softening Boko Haram's or ISIS's brutalities. Think about where these companies are in fixing governance and corruption problems in unstable countries. Think about where these solutions are in providing basic sanitation and water to the world's poor. I bet you will come back with a different perspective. Sorry, what did you say? Oh, now I get it. You're too busy this month hiring for the new features for Asana. I understand. I wait for those features. As it turns out, to your complete luck, several not so popular yet super smart technologists have left the comforts of their lives to work on exactly these problems for several years. Go read what they have learned. As a starting point, do yourself a favor and pre-order a copy of this book. It's going to open your eyes like nothing else has. I've bashed you a lot, but I want to be honest. I applaud you for your effort. You have some really valid and good points about companies not prioritizing purpose and focusing solely on revenue. But that is the sole purpose of for-profit companies, however you look at it. I don't have your time on video forever, but read this book to know what I mean. In your talk, you also push and nudge individual contributors. You'd be amazed at how many people want to do good, but just aren't able to take the plunge. If you're even a little bit successful in just that one thing, that would be huge. Now, come to think about it, why don't you set an example by taking time off your full-time job to do this? Think about it.